Hi everybody, welcome to my channel at Julie's World Crochet. I'm Julie and I am here to show you today how to do the corner to corner stitch that for blankets or anything you want to make, but the half double crochet variation. So typically if you just see corner to corner, it's usually going to be a double crochet. This is working the half double crochet, which gives this really gorgeous fabric. I like this a lot. These these textures from the clusters are, I think, maybe a little more pronounced with the half double crochet, so I really like it. And the half double crochet, let's face it, it's an easier stitch. It's a little bit faster to work. You can really do a lot working with, well, whatever yarn you want. It's useful for any size yarn. There's no requirements. Use a hook size that goes with the yarn you've chosen. I'm showing you this right now. This is a project that I'm working on to complete and what inspired me doing this video. But I'm just going to show you how this looks in a self-striping yarn. Remember that when you make it, you work it in a diagonal, so your striping yarn will be on the bias. If you're holding your blanket up square, it'll be diagonal like this. You begin it in a corner. So you're going to start it right in the corner and then you're going to continue working on. And increases are built into the design of the stitch pattern. So when you're doing this stitch, you continue to increase greater and greater. It's a really great one to use if you're making a shawl because of course it makes this, you can make a triangle as large as you want. Keep going until it's as big as you want it to be. But on the other hand, you also need to know how to do the decreases if you want to square it off. If you want to make it into a square, ultimately making it a square, then you need to start decreasing to bring that in. I'm going to show you how to do all of that right now. We'll try and keep it as straightforward as possible. Oh, one last thing I want to remind you. This here that I'm actually doing this pattern in is, as you can see, a self-striping yarn. I think it's lovely. Actually, I'll show you what it is because I'm going to work with it for a moment right now. It's from Ice Yarns. I bought it online, and it is from their Cakes Melange line. It's a 3-weight yarn. This particular colorway is turquoise and gray, but they have all kinds. That's not the point. It's a really nice 3-weight yarn, contains wool, works really well. I'm happy with it for my project with cat hair on it. Pardon me. I wash them before I give them away. Anyway, the stitch when you're working it, I just want to show you to begin with. If you're using a self-striping yarn, you know I showed you that we start here. Keep in mind, because this is such a short distance, your stripes on these corners, if you're doing stripes, are going to they'll be wider. They'll take more rows before you get to the part of your blanket where it's much less than that. Now this is a good yarn because it transitions well, so I don't see a really distinct spot where it works fine. I think it works fine. But just keep that in mind because I'm not going to show you how to do color corrections for this. That's for another video if it matters and you want it specifically to be consistent. Other than that, any yarn will do, any size. Use the hook size that works with your yarn. So before we begin how to start it, because I find starting corner to corner, I still find a little confusing. I have to think a little bit harder and to get comfortable right away. But once you are doing and making the clusters, this stitch is so straightforward. It's so easy to put on a good movie or an audiobook and just chug along, and you will whip up a blanket in no time. You can make it any size. It's entirely your decision. So again, this is a half double crochet rather than a double crochet. There are a couple of differences, very small variations if you are going to do a double crochet. So at the very end of this video, I will take a moment to tell you what those differences are. In the meantime, what you are doing in all kinds of double crochet or corner to corners, I'll show you. Here's the side of my blanket coming in nice and straight. Here, and then here it is coming up at a diagonal. And each one of these nubs here, these are a cluster that we're going to work all the way along. You can see them below us. When you make a cluster consists of a chain space, because you're going to do a couple chains, and then there are 3 half double crochets in them. The good thing is you don't have to count stitches. Once you get going, you are just going to work into this chain space. So it also allows for, if you ever have any difficulties as far as one too many chain slips or slip stitches or whatever, that's going to absorb that. That's going to cover that up. It makes it a very easy pattern to work for beginners and on. It just takes a moment for how you're starting it. So let's take a look at what this looks like first. So I finished a cluster here. We're going to work into this next cluster. And like I said, we work right into this chain space. So just reach over and you're going to slip stitch to connect these two parts together. And once they're slip stitch, you're going to chain two. That's your chain. That's going to make the chain space in when you're coming back around the other way. Brings your crochet hook up to a good working height. And then you want to do into this chain space 3 half double crochets. Half double crochet, you yarn over. I'm going to insert it into the chain space. I'm not worried about the chain itself. Pull up my loop. I have 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. That's why it's faster than double crochet, because double crochet I'd have to make 2 separate movements to complete the stitch. All right, that's 1 half double crochet. So yarn over, do another one, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over through all 3, and last half double crochet, yarn over, pull a loop, yarn over through all 3. That completes my 3 half double crochets. So on to the next cluster. Just immediately go and do your slip stitch into the next half double chain space, chain 2, and then do 3 half double crochets again into that same chain space. Yarn over, pull my loop, yarn over through 3, the second half double, whoops, look at that, I pulled a second half double crochet and third half double crochet. Right, so there's my next 2. Let's just do one more. We're going to insert our hook, slip stitch to connect them, and then chain 2 into the chain space, half double crochets, 3 of them. And this is exactly what it would be if you, last half double crochet, if they were double crochets, you're also doing 3 in that cluster. So the pattern's kind of always the same. It's really easy just to do whatever variation you want. And you continue along until you get to your row, and you can see, of course, why that gives you your diagonal pattern. So let's take a look at how to start this. So now let's go over how to begin your corner to corner. So I'm just going to start. This is a regular acrylic. This is the favorite line from Ice Yarns also, actually. It's just a nice regular acrylic. It's a 4-weight. I'm going to make my loop. And I'm just using a 5mm hook for the tutorial here, this just demonstration. So here I begin. To start with, we're going to make a single cluster to begin. That's going to begin our corner. So we begin with 5 chains. All right, so we have our 5, and remember with our cluster we had 3 half double crochets and we had a chain 2. Here's our chain 2, and in our third one, it's actually the middle one, so whether you go forward or back, it's going to be your third chain. You're going to begin with a half double crochet. Remember, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook, and pull your loop so that you have 3 chains or 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and just pull through all 3. And we're going to do that half double crochet in our next stitch. Pull my loop, yarn over through 3, and then our third half double crochet into the last stitch. So there's our cluster. There's our chain 2, which makes that chain space we'll work into again, and our 3 half double crochets. So don't go anywhere. You're not doing anything yet. All you're going to do is go immediately into making another cluster, but we do it with making the 5 again because this will technically be a new row. So we have 1, 2, 3, right? We're going to do our half double crochet, and in the next stitch we're going to do our half double crochet, and in our next stitch a half double crochet. And that is how you're going to begin every new row, with your chain 5 and then your 3 half double crochets. You'll end up like this. They look side by side, but now is when you turn into your next row. Just flip the whole fabric over. Right now we only have the one cluster, but ultimately there'll be a lot more fabric attached, the rest of your blanket or your piece, and you just flip the whole thing over, and that presents that chain space right at the top here. So we're going to insert our hook and connect our two pieces. Okay, so this is part of our second row. We're going to chain 2. We just start a regular cluster. Chain 2 and then 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so now this is the tail end. This is the part that always felt kind of confusing until you got going and you had more rows. So here's 1, we have 2. This is our end piece. Again, we had ended our row, so we're going to start a new row with our chain 5. And then into the middle stitch, that third stitch, we'll do our half double crochets. And in the next stitch, the second half double crochet, and then our last half double crochet. Again, you can see them all lined up here. We're going to hold that one and just flip that over. And there's our row we're going to work against. So here we just tuck this up so that they're connected now. Start our new cluster with a chain 2, half double crochet, half double crochet, and the final half double crochet, all the way to the end of the row. So one more time, we connected them. We're at the end of the row. Make sure you do the cluster here because we've just come into a new chain space, right? This is the increase that keeps expanding the size of your piece, right? So we'll go along, we have 1, then 2, and we're just continuing to increase all the way along. And that will make you ultimately your triangle. If you just get to whatever size you want, if you want to make a shawl or a scarf or a headband, whatever, once you get to the size you want, just stop. You will have a nice triangle piece, perfectly symmetrical. However, if you want to be able to decrease it or make a rectangle, you'll need to do decreases, and that's what's going to turn your corners so that you can come up and make a square, rectangle, any versions of those shapes. I'm just going to do one more row right now, and then we are going to show you how to start squaring that off, okay? So to turn to the next row again, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're starting our new row. We'll do half double crochet, whoops, hello, half double crochet, half double crochet, whoops, and a final half double crochet. Right, again, you can see how it's so much easier now, more obvious, because you're just going to turn the whole fabric so that you can connect these together with our slip stitch. All right, I'm just going to work to the end. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I have just come to the end of this row, and I've slip stitched to connect these two. Actually, I can come back for a moment and just show you. Here's my cluster, and I'm just coming in and doing my normal slip stitch. But if I want to start squaring this off into a little swatch, instead of doing that final cluster, which is the increase, instead I'm going to be decreasing here. To do that, I've slip stitched to join these to connect together, but I'm only going to do the first 2 chains that go with this next cluster. I'm not going to complete it. I'm just doing a chain 2, and now I'm just going to turn it with just that chain 2. and I'm going to connect these together with the slip stitch. And you can see I started here, but it's now turned the corner. It's a decrease. And ultimately, when I straighten it up like that, like you'd lay a blanket, this becomes the new corner. But what I've done is I've done the decrease, and I'm going to continue to do that every time I come to this side. I recommend when you're doing this to use just a single stitch marker just to mark the side that you are going to be doing the decreases on. And only in the beginning, because you can easily keep going on. Sometimes I've done that, but with the stitch marker there, it just reminds me, I'll see it as I work towards that side and reminds me that, oh yes, I'm going to come to the end and I am doing the decreases on this side. Now, if you want to make a square, when you get to the size you want, as far as diagonally goes, all you do is you begin decreasing on both sides. So if you do it simultaneously on the same row and you begin doing your decreases, you will end up with a square piece. I'm talking when you're choosing just one side to do the decreases on, that's when you're going to make a rectangle. And I'm going to show you that right now doing this. I've done the decrease on this side. We made a chain 2 and just flipped it and connected it to the new row. So now I'm going to continue on. I'll make my first cluster, so chain 2, and then do my 3 half double crochets, 2, 3, connect it, slip stitch, single crochet. I've got a pallet wool gathering up on me, 3 half double crochets, okay, so now I've connected to my last cluster here. This is not the one, I want this to continue on. This is not the one where I've done the decrease. So I'm going to chain 2 and also do the cluster that belongs here. So this is the normal increase. There's my 3 half double crochets. You see that? So I've extended this length. I'll start with my row change, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will do my 3 half double crochets, 3 half double crochets. Okay, turn my work up. And you can see I'm going to start working this row back up here. Let me just connect this new one. Right? I've still got a straight edge that's continuing to grow this way, but I have done the decrease here, so this is as wide as it's going to get. Let me work back to this end and we'll do the decrease again to show you how to maintain it. Okay. So here we are again. Now we come to the side, the end of my row on the side that I am doing the decreases on, that I have finished expanding. So I'm going to do the same thing I did when I first made that turn. I'm going to just connect these together like we normally would. That's my last cluster. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm not making a cluster. I'm going to go right to turning my work and connecting these together. Just like that, and then start working my row back up. I'm going to do the decrease on this end so we can square this off into a final little swatch. So I made my connection. I'm going to start my cluster, chain 2, and then do my 3 half double crochets. A little more yarn here. All right, connect my piece. Let me just double check. Yes, that's 3. 1, 2, 3 half double crochets. All right, so now this is my end. And now, normally up to this point, I had continued with my normal increases here, right? This has been going along as the diagonal, and it's continuing to go up, but instead of continuing here, I've been doing the decreases, and that's kept that edge going straight in that direction. Ultimately, it'll be a blanket that'll turn this way. Well, this won't, but you understand. So now I want to square this off. So to do that, I just do exactly what I did before. I start doing decreases. I'm going to connect these. I'm going to chain 2, but I'm not going to do that cluster. Instead, I'm going to flip my work and connect it with a slip stitch to the next row. Excuse me. All right, so I'm at my little final corner pretty much. So I've connected it to my next row. I'm going to do my 2, my 3 half double crochets. There's my cluster that I've put in here. And then I'm going to connect it to my row here. And as you can see, that was the last one to fill in, and I'm left with a nice little rectangle. And here was the start. I mean, it was technically that way, but, and here's the start. This is the first one we did. And we worked across, and then started decreasing. So worked across, right? We did the decreases here until we got to this, and then we went sideways to get our final piece in there. It's really nice and straightforward. I really love the texture. I find it's just really easy to do once you get going with it. You get really, really comfortable fast, other than taking a moment to not kind of get frustrated. Well, I have before, but you can always use this video to take a look and watch it. It looks great with a solid color yarn because it has this really great texture, but it does work really well, of course, for the striping yarn. I'm really impressed with how nice it looks. It gives you just that little bit of visual interest without being overly weird or anything, and it doesn't have too many holes. You know, I'm using a fairly large hook with this one because I'm using the 5.5 millimeter hook, but that's because I like that really scoochy, that's what I'm going for, is the point. So I highly recommend you use it. And now for the people who want to know about doing it as a double crochet. When you're doing the double crochet, the only difference is that it is a double crochet, so you have to allow for that. When you are doing, let me say I wanted to do a cluster. Normally when we're doing these half double crochet clusters, you're doing chain 2. But remember, that's because half double crochet, that's the height we use for a half double crochet. A double crochet is a taller stitch. You just need to account for 3. So you're going to be doing, I'm going to do it this way for a second. You're going to be doing 3, chaining 3, and then doing 3 double crochets. I'm not going through how to do a double crochet at the moment. Just remember, you start it with the yarn over, and when you pull a loop, you just go through 2 and then go through 2 instead of both of them. You can see why the half double crochet is a little bit faster, because you just don't have to do the 2 motions, and overall it just adds up for the number of stitches you do. So, but this half double crochet is exactly the same, other than you're going to allow for 3 stitches, and that is the same when you get to your new, I'm just going to go into the end here. When you go to do your new row, it's the same thing. You have to allow for 3 stitches for the double crochet, or 3 chains. So just like you're doing the exact same thing here, so you're going to need 1, 2, 3. This is where you're going to have your 3 double crochet stitches go into, and your chain needs to be 3 long. So 1, 2, 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to start each row with a total of 6 stitches. And you're going to work into that 3rd stitch, or 4th stitch back, 3rd stitch up. And do double crochets into them. Just so it's the same, exactly the same principle. You just have to allow for that extra stitch. That's the only difference between them. You do your regular increasing stitch pattern exactly the same way, and you apply the same principles when you're doing the decreases. Except when you're doing your decreases, let me just flip this and I'll show you here. Remember, when you're doing your decreases, I'm going to connect this. I don't know what I was connecting as a decrease, but imagine I was, instead of just doing 2 and then turning it to attach to my work, because it's double crochets, you would do 3, because remember, you're always accounting for the size of the stitch, and then you will do the decrease connection. So you'll need 3 stitches. That is the only difference between the two. The double crochet, I'll pull this out, it does look weird, doesn't it? The double crochet corner to corner also looks really great. I think these little kind of textural visual parts are not quite as tight. They're a little bit looser, but also still a very lovely combination and stitch. I really like it a lot. So happy stitching to you. I hope you make something out of it. If you found it easy, if you're a beginner, this is really, really doable. I did this as the very first stitch I did for a piece, so that I worked up, that worked. It's one of the very first things I ever did. It's very doable, really accessible, and really kind of fun to do, especially in the half double crochet version. So happy hooking, happy stitching, and I will talk to you soon. Give us a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks. Bye-bye.